What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Roster Bubble Series video. Please hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you know when a live stream pops through drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Hope you guys enjoyed your 4th of July weekend. With that being said, as usual, please share this out. It is a dead time in the NFL offseason, and content creators who try to be a little more creative than others, like myself, don't get as many views as they do during training camp, preseason, and the regular season. So would appreciate sharing out to different communities and different people on social media, NFL fans, Giant fans, whoever. So another Roster Bubble Series video. In these type of videos, I go into a player who's on the roster bubble, their background, their competition, how they can win a spot on the roster, how they can lose a spot on the roster, followed up by prediction at the end. And also, once again, keep in mind, these are not final predictions, as I will have final predictions at the end of the preseason this year. So today's candidate / profile is Austin Allen, one of my favorite undrafted free agents that we did cover in that video / podcast episode with Nick Falato. So go check that out if you haven't already. But I'll talk about Austin Allen here for some of you who don't know. Austin Allen, undrafted free agent out of Nebraska. And he is a big guy. He is almost 6'9", if he's not 6'9" already. 6'8", 6'9", 23 years old. With that being said, his time in Nebraska, the first 2 years, not really much production at the college level. He got 2 receptions in 2 games in his first year, and his second year in 8 games, he had 7 receptions for 83 yards. Then, the last 2 years of his college career, he had more production. In 8 games in 2020, he had 18 receptions for 236 yards and 1 touchdown. And then for Nebraska, in his final year, 11 games, 38 receptions, 602 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And a fun fact, just for some of you guys out there, these two did play together. Austin Allen and Wan'Dale Robinson did play together in Nebraska, so there's a fun fact for you. Some strengths and weaknesses. He has the ability to absorb contact in the middle of the field. He can take a hit. And we know drops have been a problem for the receiving core, just overall for the New York Giants the last few years. But with this guy's strength, at least with taking hits, he's not going to drop the ball a ton of times. He does a good job with down blocks, high IQ of blocking angles, can make defenders miss, and he is a possible red zone threat. With the height, he's a 50-50 ball guy, 6'9", and if he makes the roster and if he's actually, a good tight end for the New York Giants, it's going to be big in the red zone because, Bellinger isn't as tall as Austin Allen, and most defenders, most linebackers are like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", but Austin Allen's 6'9". If he could work on a couple of things, he could be really good. He could be really good for the New York Giants. As for weaknesses, low production in college until the last 2 seasons. He isn't very quick, not very athletic. Occasionally lacks the play strength and push at the line of scrimmage, and did have a tough time against higher competition and tougher competition versus Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So he needs to work on a couple of things blocking-wise, but once again, he's very good with blocking angles, high IQ, smart football player. The athleticism isn't totally there, but there's also, once again, the positives of red zone threat, 6'9", 50-50 ball guy, and he's going to be competing with a lot of different guys in training camp to be a receiving target, because I think that's honestly where they're going to go with this tight end group. Obviously, Bellinger's already locked to make the roster, so do they want blocking tight ends like the Giants have been wanting the last few years, or do they want receiving tight ends and they're not going to run the ball much? Maybe that's the case. So he'll be competing with guys like Chris Myrick, Ricky Seals-Jones, Jordan Akins, and Andre Miller. As for Andre Miller, undrafted free agent out of Maine, transitioning to tight end from wide receiver. So we'll see, what he does. He'll need to add some weight, but he is 6'6", 6'7", so he's a pretty tall dude. Jordan Akins, veteran tight end, not necessarily of the blocking type, but he is a good receiving threat. Spent some time with Andy Bischoff in Houston for the last couple of years. Ricky Seals-Jones, tight end. Just did a video on him in terms of the roster bubble series, so check that out. But mostly receiving tight end, not necessarily a blocking threat, veteran tight end, of course. And Chris Myrick, who spent the last year-ish with the New York Giants, also spent some time with the Bengals and Miami Dolphins in the past. How can he win? Show some skill as a blocking and receiving threat. Of course, I think the main focus for Brian Daboll and whoever determines who makes the roster is going to be receiving, because the modern day NFL offense is going towards receiving. And I'm not saying blocking tight ends aren't needed, but you know, you look at Brian Daboll's offense the last few years, it's mostly around the passing game. And unless you have extra guys, sorry for the mumbling and stumbling, but unless you have extra guys as an extra tight ends in for pass protection, which you can honestly just do with offensive tackles or a good running back to block on third down, you really don't need blocking tight ends all that much if you got an offense like, for example, the Buccaneers. O.J. Howard, I don't think, is that great of a blocker, at least from what I've heard. Maybe it's a different story. Cameron Brate, the same thing. But Rob Gronkowski, in his years with the Buccaneers, he was a good blocking threat, and of course his years with the Patriots too, but his receiving ability and just being as big as he fucking was. So show some skills of blocking, receiving threat, and that blocking just adds on as well, whether that, you know, could be special teams or whatever the case is, wherever they could use him as a blocking threat. That just adds in an extra thing that leaps him over guys like Ricky Seals-Jones, that leaps him over guys like Myrick, Akins, and Miller. If he could be a better blocker than those four, he may actually make the roster. But once again, having a high IQ, it also comes down not just to smarts, but execution on the field. How he can lose: doesn't outperform the veterans, loses blocking reps, and drops passes when with the 2s and 3s. Apparently, he was getting some action with the 1s in minicamp and, you know, during OTAs. So that's a positive sign. But once again, when it comes down to actual contact and joint practices and preseason games, he's going to have to show his strength. And if he doesn't outperform the veterans, it's going to be a loss for him. He may not make the roster. And I think the biggest thing that he has to excel at is the receiving game. He's 6'9". I understand his athleticism isn't there, but if he at least has the hands to compete with guys like Ricky Seals-Jones, Andre Miller, and Jordan Akins, he could be in there. And if he's not very good in terms of the receiving game, if he drops passes, he might just find himself on the practice squad or another roster for that matter. So if he loses reps, doesn't outperform the veterans, and drops passes, he's not making the roster. He'll probably find himself on the practice squad. In terms of a prediction, I do have him getting cut, though. I think he'll make the practice squad or another NFL roster. I would hate to lose him because he's one of my favorite undrafted free agents. But the way I'm looking at it now, it's Bellinger, Ricky Seals-Jones, and another tight end, which I will name in a few videos from now. But I think they're going to focus on receiving tight ends, receiving threats, and not necessarily blocking threats. If they need blocking threats in terms of the running game, they could bring in an extra offensive lineman with Daniel Bellinger and maybe somebody else, or Jeremiah Hall. I already predicted him to make the 53-man roster. It could definitely happen. I might be wrong, but at the same time, there's a lot of different things you can do, and, you know, finagling around with Daniel Bellinger as the only blocking tight end is something I actually see Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka doing. But if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops your drops. Appreciate you all coming back. Also share this out as well. Peace out, guys. See you later, and stay cool, of course.